Hello, everyone. This is Anka Johnson, and I thank you so much for being here and wanting to learn a little bit more about what functional nutrition is all about. And so, what I wanted to do is if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and then we will talk about them at the end of the presentation. And if you can, stay muted throughout the presentation so that we can honor the time that we wanted to be able to move through this presentation, which is 30 minutes. So who am I? If you don't know me, I am Anka Johnson. I am a board-certified functional nutrition counselor, board certified health, life, and leadership coach, and also a Reiki master. But I'm also, of course, mother to Griffin, wife to my hubdar Tim, and then you can see I love my horse Guinness, and then we have other fur babies as well. I came to functional nutrition because I was frustrated with not being listened to in regards to the healthcare system. And some of the things that were really challenging was that I knew that there was something deeper that was wrong, but I didn't feel like I was listened to. And so that started me on my own discovery process, if you will. And it led me ultimately to functional nutrition. And so I know that there are a lot of other people out there just like me who know that there's something going on, and maybe they've tried certain things already, maybe they haven't, but they want to make sure that they are addressing what needs to be addressed, and they'd like to do it in a way that is more sustainable for their health. So one of the things with functional nutrition that we do is functional nutrition uses nutrition and lifestyle to help you make changes to your wellness so that you can start feeling better again. And with all of that, one of the things that I have named myself is I'm calling myself a funk nut, because I truly am nutty about functional nutrition and helping other people feel better. So tonight's menu is what exactly is functional nutrition. Something called 36 Holes in the Roof, which is quite interesting. We've got part 1 and part 2 on that one. Why we would want to practice functionally. And then something called 3 Roots, Many Branches, and a Terrain. And I really look forward to going through that with you, as well as the Roadmap to Resolution, which is the framework that we work in with functional nutrition. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the gap between the patient and the doctor or the wellness team and how we can close that gap. The hero's journey, which is all about you. You are the hero. Finally, a case study, and then 36 Holes in the Roof, part 2. All right, so let's get started. So what is functional nutrition? Well, if you look at the sheer definition of what functional nutrition is from the school that I went to, the definition was the practice of considering every aspect of one's health, diet, and overall lifestyle when giving recommendations for healing. And I can simplify that and just say that what we do is we look at nutrition, lifestyle, and we bring together everything that the person is exposed to as far as diet and environment, emotional challenges, things like that. All of these things are considered when we are looking at somebody's health from a functional lens. And that's why I thought this picture that I have up here was really appropriate. I love the shaking hands, in the root system of the trees. And then we don't even see that if we're standing above the soil. We just see the trees and their beautiful branches and their beautiful leaves. But underneath, there's a lot going on. And so that brings us to the 3 points on the right, which is another functional saying that we have, which is everything is connected, we are all unique, and all things matter. And I will keep coming back to that as we go through the presentation. So 36 holes in the roof. He's not dead. There is a doctor, his name is Dr. Dale Bredesen, and he is from the Cleveland Clinic, and he is in Ohio, and he is an Alzheimer's researcher. And what he did was he spoke about the cognitive decline that's associated with Alzheimer's disease. And what he shared applied not only to Alzheimer's, but actually to all health issues. And so he spoke about the mistake that the medical community had been making in regards to Alzheimer's and trying to target the disease with what he called one single agent. And what he did was he compared it to the reversal of AIDS. And if you were around in the 80s, you probably had an idea that they were trying to find, the one cure for AIDS. But what AIDS really required and requires, and what they know now, is what they call a cocktail therapy. And he said that Alzheimer's also requires that many-pronged approach. And that's because Alzheimer's, like many health challenges, is multifactorial. So it has many underlying causes, and we need to take a personalized approach to target all of the root causes of the condition. So in other words, we need to take that functional approach because remember, there's those root hands shaking hands. So Dr. B went on to compare Alzheimer's to having 36 holes in the roof. You were probably wondering where that was going to come in. And I have my little schematic drawing here. This was the best one. I don't know if there's 36 holes, but there are plenty of holes in this roof. And so the question was, how many holes do we need to plug in order to make this roof better, in order to fix it? Do we need to plug one? Do we need to plug half? Do we need to plug all of them? And so that's kind of what I want to have you think about a little bit, and then we'll come back to this in part 2. But, how many holes do we need to plug in order to make a difference? That's really the question I want to leave you with. So let's look at why we would want to practice functionally. Now, I want to make it very clear that I am not anti-Botox or anti-medical community, not at all. In fact, I work with physicians who are allopathic and who are also of a more holistic nature. So I work with the patient's medical team and their wellness team. But what practicing functionally means is that one of the things is we ignore the trends and we ignore the quick fixes. So that's why I have this picture here of this woman getting an injection, which I assume is something like Botox. But what happens is when we look at working with trends and quick fixes, we look at kind of a one-size-fits-all approach. And that's why I have this great picture of how one size does not fit all. You have, the elephant and the snake and the turtle, the bird. I mean, none of those are going to fit into the same stocking or whatever it might be that they're trying to fit into. And that's the same thing that happens with your health, is that there isn't a one size fits all approach. And so when we practice functionally, what we do is we focus on the patient. Remember, all things are connected, everything matters. And we focus not on their disease. So what that means is that if I have two people who come to me and let's say each one of them has a cancer diagnosis, I'm not going to look at them as the cancer diagnosis. I'm going to look at them as the individuals that they are. And so if one of them is a woman who is, 21 years old and the other one is a man who is 76 years old, we're going to be looking at those people very differently because they got to where they are in a very different path. And we'll talk a lot more about that in a minute. So that path, in order for us to be able to change and bring the body into a healing state and then bring the body into a healing frame, we use a framework instead of a formula or a protocol. So again, if you think about when you are focusing on a disease process, you're thinking about a protocol that you would follows. So again, I'm just going to use cancer on a very high level. The protocol might include chemotherapy, it might include radiation, it might include some of these other things. But instead, what we do with a functional approach is we look at the framework. We take a framework, which I'll share with you in a minute, and we look at how that person got to where they are today. And we look at that from their lifestyle, from their nutrition, from their emotional state, many different things. And one of the things that we do, because we do these things, the changes that we start to make are sustainable, because we're not looking at the trends and the quick fixes. We're not looking at just the disease. We're looking at the whole picture. And because of that, we have a better idea of how to make things function again in a way that makes it sustainable. So that brings us to the 3 roots and many branches. And this is something that we aspire to and look at when we are working and operating from a functional lens. So when we look at the roots, which are down here, we look at 3 things. We look at genes, digestion, and inflammation. Now, I love being able to connect the 7 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon anytime I can. And so I kind of like to compare the genes, digestion, inflammation roots to that same degree of separation. If you start to think of it, if you start to think of some of the things that might be what we call branches, so that's some of these things that are listed here. This is a very, very short list, but branches are typically the symptoms that we experience, the diseases that we might be diagnosed with. But if you start to think of the branches, they will tie back to either one or more of these roots. And when we look at that, we realize that we're not just looking for the root cause, because a lot of times people are looking at the one root cause. And remember, things are multifactorial. So we're looking at the 3 different roots that typically are the things that give us the expression of the branches that we actually see and have to deal with. So if we look at on the right side here, here's the 3 different roots again. We look around each root, there is something called a trend. And these trends are things that are affecting the terrain in which the root is growing in. So think about the terrain as the soil. And so from a gene and a gene expression perspective, you think about the environment that person is in, you think about the movement that they have, definitely their mindset and the food that they're eating. And then you'll see that with the other 2, inflammation and digestion, we have similar trends that we start to take a look at, because we understand that certain disease processes are starting in that terrain. And so when we start to focus on that and change that terrain, that's when we start to see positive change happening for that person, because your body took a very specific path to get to where you are today. And if we can start to understand what that path was and how it was influenced with these certain factors in the terrain and how the roots are being affected, then we can change some of those things and be very specific. So we can have a very targeted approach, not a shotgun approach. And we can hone in very well to be able to help that person to heal. And like I mentioned, we do that using lifestyle and nutrition. And there is so much that we can do with those areas of focus. So then the other thing that we do from a functional lens, and when we work functionally, is, again, what we don't want to do is we don't want to scatter our approach and dilute the focus basically on all of the different issues. So remember those branches. And again, this is that short list, right? So let's say an individual has double the amount, or let's not even say double the amount. Let's just say the individual has these branches that they're coming to me with. It's very easy for that person to become very overwhelmed and not know where to start and what to do. And so that's where these tiers come in. So the first tier that we work with is something called the non-negotiables. And these non-negotiables are this bottom tier, and it sets the foundation for everything else to be able to work on. And the three non-negotiables that we work on is we work on blood sugar balance, we work on sleep, and we also work on how do you poop? How do you eliminate? And in functional nutrition, we talk a lot about your poop. So if you're shy about that, don't worry. Once we start working together, you won't be shy about it anymore. But if you think about, for example, blood sugar, most of the time people think that they have to have some kind of a diabetic tendency or something like that in order for somebody to be looking at their blood sugar. But blood sugar affects our moods, it affects our emotions, it affects our energy levels, it affects our sleep, it affects our hormones. So we want to make sure that those blood sugar levels are stable, because if they're not stable, if they're not balanced, that's one of the first things that we want to look at. The other thing is sleep, as we talked about. So sleep is another one of those non-negotiables. And if you're not sleeping, that means your body is not repairing and restoring and doing all the things that it needs to do during restorative sleep, which means that it's struggling then during the day. And so we want to make sure that your sleep is as optimal as we can get it. And if you've watched any commercials recently, you'll notice that many of those commercials talk about sleep disruption and sleep issues and insomnia and this and that and the other thing. So we know that there are a lot of sleep issues out there for people. And finally, the elimination. If you are not eliminating properly, then your body is in muddy waters, as I like to call it. And so we want to be able to clear those muddy waters. We want to be able to help your body get rid of what it doesn't need so that it can uptake what it does need. The second tier is deficiency to sufficiency, which basically means that if you are deficient in something, we're going to bring that up to being sufficient. So that might include if you never eat vegetables, but you're only eating some fruit, we will bring those servings of vegetables that you need into the picture. So that's just an example. And then finally, tier 3 is dismantling the dysfunction. So if there is a dysfunction, so possibly already a disease process, maybe it is maybe it's diabetes, we start to be able to dismantle that dysfunction. Now, what you might have already guessed is that we don't do this tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 in a linear fashion. We actually do that in it's kind of all over the place. It's, there's no, when you make a change, there's no straight line from A to B to make that change. And this is no different. So when we're working on those non-negotiables, very often always, we are working on some of the tier 2 and tier 3 issues at the same time. And sometimes by the time the non-negotiables are really taken care of to a certain degree, we don't even have to get really focused with deficiency, with number 2 and number 3. We can just continue to work on number 1 and make things better and better and better. So that brings us to the gap in our healthcare system. And as I mentioned, we've got the patient on the bottom here of this triangle. Excuse me. And then we have the doctor or the wellness team, like I like to say it, on the top. And in between that, we have a gap. So why do we have a gap? What does that gap look like? So that gap is the ability for the patient to be able to focus on what it is that the doctor has shared. So you have diagnosis XYZ, And so you have to do certain things. You have to lose this much weight and you have to do this much exercise and you have to take this out of your life and bring this in. But then how does the patient do it? And that's a huge gap because oftentimes, number one, the doctor and the wellness team at the top of that pyramid, they typically don't have the time, they don't have the resources, and often they don't have the skills in order to be able to help that patient really figure out how they can actually do what we're asking them to do. And so that's where I come in. That's where functional work comes in. So being a coach as well, life, health, and leadership coach, as well as a functional nutritionist, what I can do and the skill set that I bring to this is that I can help that person, that patient, understand what do we need to focus on first, what do we need to focus on second, and then how do we get there? So just think about like the last time you tried to make a pretty major change. Think about, if you've made a New Year's resolution, how difficult it is sometimes to keep those resolutions and how averse we are to change. And so it can really be difficult, even though we know that we really have to do it. And we're all motivated very differently. So some of us are motivated internally and externally, and then other people, are motivated by external things like a deadline or going to the gym with a friend. But then when they have to do it on their own and they don't have anybody that holds them accountable, they can't get it done. So I have a couple of things here, 5 different relationships or partnerships, basically, that we want to be able to focus on. So the you is actually you. So the first one is you and the functional nutrition counselor. And so we work together to better understand each other, to create a partnership with communication, trust, respect, and so that you can do what you need to do and feel very safe doing it while we are working together. The second one is the functional nutrition counselor and your lifestyle. So if you tell me that, you don't work out in the morning at 5 a.m. and you're not going to, and no way, I'm going to respect that. And we're going to figure out another way for us to be able to help you with your lifestyle. If you have limitations, you live out in the country and, you can't or don't want to go to a gym. Those are other things that we can work with. So if you have limitations because you're in pain, all these things, that's what we work on. You and yourself. So helping you to really communicate in a nonviolent way with yourself, empowering yourself, motivating yourself, having you become your own wellness advocate. All of those things create empowerment so that it is more sustainable for you for the long run, because you gain access to tools and then you know how to use those tools. And not only that, you can then take those tools and apply them to other situations. So it really creates a very different way for you to be talking to self. And then functional nutrition counselor and both clinicians and doctors. So clinicians, I have this section basically for the holistic group of doctors. So chiropractors, naturopath, and then like massage therapists, et cetera. And then the doctors are the allopathic doctors. So I will work with all of these people. If they're willing to work with me, I work with them because we have you in common. And that's the important thing, is for you to feel well. So the hero's journey, as I mentioned, is you. And this hero's journey basically means that you get what you need in order for you to be able to move from the challenges that you currently have to a place where you're able to, like I said, recycle tools that you learn how to use, and that it none of it is drudgery. All of it is joy. So, for example, and I'll kind of share a little bit here. I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but in my own healing, one of the things that I found out was that I had a lot of food sensitivities, and I had always been quite miserable with my digestive system. And so, but these food sensitivities weren't very apparent. Some of them were, dairy was, but some of the other ones weren't. Almonds was one of those. I ate a lot of almonds and a lot of things with almonds in them. But so what that meant is that anytime I ate certain things, I didn't feel very good. And so that didn't allow me to have energy, which didn't allow me to be motivated, especially to make change. And it was really difficult to be able to move forward and figure things out. And when we have somebody on our team to help us along with that information and be able to sort through what's important and what's not, and at what stage of the game things are important, it helps you to heal in a way that you can start to feel vibrant and whole again, in a way that you may never have even experienced. And so that really is my wish for everyone, is to be able to really, this last one, from feeling helpless to empowered. That's really the big piece that I want to be able to help you with. So here's a case study, and it's me. And the reason I chose me is because obviously I can speak about me and make myself public, and I'm not violating any HIPAA violations. But I went from feeling exhausted, being incredibly moody and angry and resentful, to the point where I didn't want to be in my own body. And it started right around this time when Griffin was this old. And I think here he's like 5 or 6, somewhere around there. And that's when it started for me. I started having a whole bunch of different menopause issues, hot flashes, being totally out of control to the point where I was sleeping maybe 2 to 3 hours a night. So I was exhausted. Like I said, I was super crabby, and my immune system was just horrible at that point. And so when I went repeatedly to different holistic healers and also the allopathic community, my regular doctor, I was just told that, they're there. You're just in menopause, and this, you're just going to have to get through it and you'll be fine. But I knew that there was something else going on. And without getting into details about my health, there was a lot more going on. So fast forward about 12 years, I have been working on my health a little over 2 years from a functional perspective. And that's really what brought me on this journey. And I sleep now for 8 hours every night. Recently, no hot flashes whatsoever, which is phenomenal. My weight was the last thing to jump up. So I believe it's also going to be the last thing to come back down, but it's starting to stabilize. Because I gained a little over 25 pounds in a very short period of time, it was like a little over a year, and I hadn't changed anything else. I hadn't changed my movement. I hadn't changed my way of eating. And it became very frightening because it was completely out of control. I am now empowered because I know what to do. I can tell the cause and effect from certain movement and certain foods, where my emotional state is. And honestly, I am so vibrant and happy. And that is amazing, because I used to have to choose between one activity a day. And, that was the one activity I could do, and the rest I couldn't because I just didn't have the energy. And then pain was involved too. Now I can do many of the things that I enjoy. So I can go horseback riding, I can go and work out, and then I can go for a walk with the dog. I can still be active with my son and with my husband. So go out with friends. So I have my life back, and that is honestly priceless, priceless, priceless. So that is what I wish for you. So 36 holes in a roof, part 2. So at this point, you probably have an idea of, how many holes do you actually have to plug. So this is my poor attempt at graphics. So giggle all you want, but those holes are covered. So when we work with a multifactorial approach, such as functional nutrition, what we start doing is we start plugging the holes, like I showed you with the 3 root focus, and then also with working on those non-negotiables, just that tier 1 non-negotiables. And so when we start doing that, the minute we start working on those tier 1 non-negotiables, we're providing tools to that client. And so the client is already feeling empowered. They're already making changes. And so it's not a quick fix, not at all, but they're seeing positive change. And that's the amazing thing. And so because of that, the person becomes more engaged. They become more attached to it themselves, as far as taking ownership of their own healing. And in the past, many individuals don't know how to take ownership of their own healing. They've never been given the opportunity. And if they do have to start taking their ownership of their own healing, it's a really scary endeavor, because they just have no idea even where to start again. So how many holes do we have to plug? Somewhere around a half. And we're making huge strides, because by this time, we're really working on those tier 1 areas. We're impacting tier 2 and tier 3. We're cleaning up muddy waters. We're focusing on those 3 roots. And that person is becoming empowered. And they become their own advocate for their own health. And they have tools that they can repurpose, they can recycle, and they can reuse. And that is fascinating. So when we do that, that's when we're working functionally. So I want to thank you for being here. I really appreciate you being here. I'm 3 minutes over, not too bad. But if anybody has any questions, just let me know. I'll go to the chat here in a second. If anybody would like me to send them, in fact, I will just send to everybody the recording that we did here tonight, and also the free ebook that I'm offering. And then you'll get the links to all of these resources. And as it says here, if your body's not right, the rest of your day will go all wrong. Take care of yourself. And that really covers it, because you are with you 100% of the time. And so the more that you understand and have tools on how to take care of yourself in any situation, the better you're going to be and the better you're going to feel. So thank you, everybody, for being here. I truly appreciate you taking the time out for your own health. And I look forward to seeing a little bit more of you in the future. Thanks very much. Take care. Bye-bye.